Hi, I'm Vanessa Love. This is my channel about mental health fields. Alright, if this is your first time here, welcome. Hold on, let me, this is just, there's a sales call. Just wanted to dismiss that. If this is your first time here, I hope that you will watch more videos and hopefully you'll like what you hear. Alright, so some myths about therapy and mental illness. I think I'm more going to focus on mental illness and like institutionalization before I get even to the therapy part, but I think it'll be interesting. Alright, so what I've heard a lot about is legally insane. Now, I know some history about mental health. I really actually loved reading. Actually, I listened to it from LibriVox. It was 10 Days in the Madhouse. Now, there is a movie. It is very hard to find. It was in it was in theaters for like a hot minute, like a week, and then it was gone. I don't think that they felt like they were going to get a lot of revenue out of it, so they just were kind of like, here it is, and then it was done. So I actually did find it. It's okay. It's very different from what I thought it would be, but it's fine. So if you're unfamiliar, about the turn of the century, this investigative reporter named Nellie Bly decided to pretend to be crazy. So she went to a boarding house, continued to just act kind of funky, make funky faces, all of this stuff, and she got sent to turn of the century Bellevue in New York, and she wrote this investigative this very scathing review of it, actually, and some of it is still actually does ring true, about like people only there for the paychecks and all of this stuff. Now, so knowing that history and all of that, I have not seen or heard anything where it was like, oh, you get a document that says that you're like legally insane or something. Like, so I don't really know where this myth came from, but I have heard this mostly in regard to drug use, where if you use too much of name drug here, you'll be legally insane. Um, Again, I don't know where that comes from. It's not a thing. It's very rare that like the state and like your insurance talk. Even if you're on state insurance, your state and the state insurance don't really talk. They're separate. I can tell you a little bit about that. In Connecticut, we have Medicaid, which is the state insurance. It's also called Husky. It's the Husky program, or Title 19, I believe, and that might be a different thing, but I've heard them used interchangeably, so I think that's the same thing. Actually, like, Husky is, their whole credentialing thing is ran by, like, HP and, like, a behavioral health partnership. It's not run by the state. So, like, even though it's state insurance, it's not actually, like, it's ran by the state, but, like, the state doesn't have, like, all of your, like, big files or anything about that. I'm like, I don't know, like, to what extent, but like that it's very separate, and because of HIPAA laws, like, they're not really going to talk too much unless you give them permission. I mean, you can look up the, what is that called, the paperwork that you have to sign. Maybe they do say something about, like, disability or something, and how they do have to talk to the state, but like, it's a whole different thing. They don't talk. So it's a very, I used to hear this when I worked at the psych hospital, and I always thought it was funny, like, oh, so we can just kind of deem you legally insane, apparently. I didn't know that, and usually, I know one time, someone said that, and then they were like, actually, I don't know that. They were like, maybe you don't get, the legally insane, certificate stamp. I don't know how that's determined. It seems just like a fictional world. Uh, but I mean, it's very possible that there was some thing where that was legally insane and you were going to be put away for the rest of your life. Um, I don't know. I've also heard that there's a lot of people who are unsafe in these facilities because there have been, unfortunately, deaths that have occurred in while people have been restrained or under constant observation, and it just hasn't, like, so some people really do worry about their safety going into these places. They're as safe as you can get. Uh, in the place where I worked, you were not allowed to have your belts, your shoelaces, staples. You had to be supervised when using scissors, and like even like the little tiny like dull edge scissors, like you still had to be watched during that because you could pass it off to someone who's trying to harm themselves, and they would be harmed, and then whole unit would be on lockdown. Um, that type of stuff. So you're as safe as you can be in those situations. There's still sometimes like times when patients aren't supervised like for like 5 or 10 minutes, and that's where things can happen. Um, there's a lot of stuff that can happen in these facilities. Most of the time people come in, they stay for a week or two, especially the adults, and then they go back to the living situation that they're in. Like, I understand that there are concerns about that, and I'm like, they're as safe as we could possibly make them. There's still going to be mistakes. There's still going to be the wrong admissions, and people trying to work the system, that type of stuff, like, and just accidental deaths. Luckily, in the place where I worked, there were no such incidences. I can think of one time where there was someone who was like, I want to say he was like in his 70s, and he had a heart attack while he was there, but they sent him to the hospital, and that's where eventually I think he like had passed away. But it wasn't because of any like thing that had happened in the hospital. It was like it was a heart condition, like, as far as I know, like, and I think it was very, very hush hush type of thing, and I'm like, that's the one thing that had happened. But like, I know, like, there had been rumors about patients like having sex. There was a doctor who was fired because he kept on admitting prostitutes and then having sex with them, which I'm like, okay, that's uh, okay. And then there was one person who she was kind of I really actually don't know the situation. I know it only from third hand, where like these two patients were flirting, which is why we discourage flirting, and this guy got mad at her for turning down his advances, and like maybe, I know, slammed her head into something, but I can't really remember what it was, and like hurt her fairly badly, and so because of his issues and all of that, he was moved to a different unit. But and she was obviously taking care of it. It's not like they were just like, oh, well, got your head slammed against a wall or something, like, you'll be fine, walk it off. Like, they took care of all of that. Yeah. So the other thing is straitjackets. Do we still use straitjackets? We do not. Not in the facility that I worked in. There were no padded rooms. The only thing that we had were restraints, and the restraints were and we had a carrier bag. I know that. We only had to use it once. And the guy, when we like had wrapped him into it, got a bloody nose, and like, you get trained in these things, and of course it's like super easy. You're like, oh, you turn the patient over on their side, and you push this little thing, like underneath them, and then you roll them back over, and then like you're able to kind of pull it out and like kind of wrap them up. It's just to be able to carry them back to their room if they're causing a ruckus. And like, that's not how it goes with someone squirming and all of this stuff. And like, I think he just got too like warm or whatever, and like he was prone to bloody noses anyway, so he got a bloody nose. in this in the middle of us trying to be like and like, you know, roll them up in kind of a weird human burrito. We don't have straitjackets anymore. We have restraints. So if someone was going to be restrained, what would happen is that first they'd be on constant observation so that we know they're breathing, you know, they're okay. The reason that people are put in restraints are, let's say that someone, starts throwing chairs, like throwing books, destroying property in any way that they can. If anyone kind of comes close to them, they're acting aggressively. That's unsafe, obviously. That's, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, well, we try to keep everyone as safe as we can. And so what happens is they're asked to take a pill. If they refused, they're told the consequences. There's like a whole routine to this. I know eventually, like, you can hold them on the ground face up, and get them to, you might have a doctor immediately write something that says that they can have a shot. It's also referred to booty juice, in case you didn't know. So they might get some booty juice. That sounds just so awful, or like the best drink ever. Like, I will have a booty juice. Like, I don't know. It does sound terrible. Sorry. I'm just making myself laugh. In this field, sometimes you do have to, like, when you work at a place like that, you do have to have, like, a sense of humor. So you might get booty juice. It's, if it's nothing else, it might be Benadryl, just in liquid form, and put in your, you know, your butt muscle. And then, like, you're asked if you want to get up and go to your room. If you still refuse, then you are carried to your room in some way. Then someone, if you do have to go to your room and you are not calmed down at that point, they will put the restraints for the ankles and then your arms. So, like, it's like at the bottom of the bed and then halfway on the bed. The beds have rubber sheets. They don't like, so it's kind of easier, I think. You are put into that. Like, everyone kind of takes their time. Like, the beds are made so that they can have these attached to them. And then you're put in there for at least 4 hours, or I think at least 2 hours, maybe minimum 1, max 4. And then after 4, they check on you. They take them off. If you're still aggressive, they will put you back in them. You're not supposed to exceed 24 hours in them, unless it is a very, very dangerous situation. And at that point, you know, in the place where I worked, you really wouldn't be in the right spot anyway, so they'd probably try and find you a place for the people who are criminally insane. Because they get hazard pay, they are the ones that have more of the spaces that would include these things. There's that. Because you are still able to sit up when your arms are strapped down and your ankles are strapped down, they have the option of a net. And the net is put over you. It's kind of like put here. So when you're laying down, there's not a lot of pressure here. Can't go higher than that, obviously, because it could, like, suffocate someone. So it's like put kind of here. They have kind of like a padding to it. And like that's strapped down to the bed so that you're not able to sit up, because some people were sitting up and just still spitting. They were like struggling and, you know, like probably moving the bed a little bit, because it's not like they were like bolted down or anything. So, you know, there are those type of issues. So that's why people sometimes are restrained down that way. Again, I think minimum an hour, max 4 hours. They have to let you out. They have to check in with you. They have to take your blood, your blood pressure, your temperature, make sure, continue to ask if you're okay. Again, you're on constant observation if you're in this situation. And yeah, I'm like, there's a couple of other rules for constant observation that aren't obviously for the restraints. And, like, this does take a toll on a lot of people. I know that, I think probably the last year that I worked there, I just decided I did not want to involve myself with these type of situations anymore. I didn't feel like, I was probably like 120 pounds, so like it was not a situation where I should really be like trying to restrain someone, and it just wasn't, it wasn't a thing. Man, I feel like this video is long enough. I'm gonna get to the whole therapy part of this. I guess I just went too long about, all of these other things that I feel like, the more education you have, the better off, like, some people are about, like, okay, so this is what's actually happening and not, like, the way that it had been or the way that, like, myth kind of makes it appear to be. But anyway, I will record another video and I will talk with you guys soon. Alright, thanks.